He's been called the villain, the hero, the great survivor. He's ruled Israel longer than any other leader in its history. But who is Benjamin Netanyahu and how did he rise to power? In this video, we'll explore the life and legacy of one of the most controversial and influential figures in the Middle East. Benjamin Netanyahu was born in Tel Aviv on October 21, 1949, to a secular Jewish family. His father, Benjamin Netanyahu, was a historian and a Zionist activist. His mother, Tzila Segal, was born in Israel to a Russian Jewish family. Netanyahu had two older brothers, Yonatan and Iddo, who also became prominent figures in Israel. Netanyahu grew up in a patriotic and intellectual environment where he learned about Jewish history, culture, and politics. When Netanyahu was 2 years old, his family moved to the United States, where his father worked as a researcher and editor. Netanyahu spent most of his childhood and adolescence in Philadelphia, where he attended high school and became interested in politics and debating. He especially liked to talk about politics, which is the way people make decisions and rules for their society. He also liked to debate, which is a way of arguing with other people using logic and evidence. He was very good at convincing other people of his opinions and views. Netanyahu never forgot that he was from Israel, and he always felt a strong bond with his homeland. He loved Israel and wanted to help it and protect it from its enemies. He visited Israel several times when he was growing up, and he saw how different it was from the United States. He saw how Israel was surrounded by hostile countries that wanted to destroy it. He saw how Israel had to fight for its survival and freedom. He saw how Israel was a small but proud and brave country that had a lot of history and culture. He decided that he wanted to be part of Israel's story and destiny. After graduating from high school, Netanyahu returned to Israel and joined the Israel Defense Forces, IDF. He served in the elite commando unit Sayeret Matkal. Netanyahu served in the IDF from 1967 to 1973, reaching the rank of captain. He was the team leader of the Sayeret Matkal unit, which was responsible for special operations and intelligence gathering. Netanyahu was involved in many daring and dangerous missions, such as Operation Inferno, 1968, Operation Gift, 1969, and Operation Isotope, 1972. He also fought in the War of Attrition, 1967 to 1970, and the Yom Kippur War, 1973-12. In a Operation Inferno, Netanyahu and his unit crossed the Suez Canal into Egypt and destroyed 16 Egyptian boats. In Operation Gift, he and his unit flew to Beirut and stole 5 Soviet-made MiG-21 fighter jets from the Lebanese Air Force. In Operation Isotope, he and his unit stormed a Sabena airplane that was hijacked by Palestinian terrorists and freed 102 hostages. Netanyahu was wounded twice during his military service. He was shot in the shoulder during Operation Inferno and suffered shrapnel wounds in his arm during the rescue of the Sabena hostages. He received the Medal of Distinguished Service and 4 other citations for his courage and leadership. In 1976, Netanyahu's older brother Yonatan, Yoni, Netanyahu, who was also a member of Sayeret Matkal, was killed in action during Operation Entebbe, a daring raid to free hostages from a hijacked Air France plane in Uganda. Netanyahu was deeply affected by his brother's death and later said that it motivated him to dedicate his life to the security and survival of Israel. In 1978, Netanyahu founded the Jonathan Institute, a think tank named after his brother, which focused on the study of terrorism and its prevention. He organized 2 international conferences on terrorism, one in Jerusalem in 1979 and one in Washington, D.C. in 1984, which brought together experts and policymakers from around the world. He also wrote several books and articles on the subject, such as Terrorism, How the West Can Win and Fighting Terrorism, How Democracies Can Defeat Domestic and International Terrorists. In 1982, Netanyahu was appointed as Israel's Deputy Chief of Mission to the United States, where he served as the second-in-command of the embassy in Washington, D.C., and as the liaison between the Israeli government and the American administration. He gained a reputation as a skilled diplomat and a persuasive spokesman for Israel's interests and policies. In 1984, Netanyahu was promoted to Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, where he represented Israel in the Security Council and the General Assembly. He used his platform to expose the activities and atrocities of terrorist groups and their sponsors, such as the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, Iran, and Syria. He also defended Israel's right to exist and to defend itself against its enemies. In 1988, Netanyahu returned to Israel and entered politics as a member of the Likud Party, a right-wing nationalist party that advocated a hardline stance on security and territorial issues. When he was elected to the Knesset in the Israeli parliament as a member of the right-wing Likud Party, he quickly rose to prominence as a charismatic and hawkish leader who opposed the peace process with the Palestinians initiated by the Labor Party. He argued that such concessions would endanger Israel's security and sovereignty, and that the PLO was not a genuine partner for peace. Netanyahu became the leader of the Likud Party in 1993, after he won the party's primary election against former Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir, who had resigned from the post following the 1992 general election, in which Likud lost to the Labor Party. Netanyahu was the first person to be elected as the leader of Likud by a direct vote of the party members, rather than by a vote of the party's Central Committee. After the signing of the Oslo Accords are a set of agreements that were signed by Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, in the 1990s, with the aim of resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and establishing a two-state solution, which he denounced as a betrayal of Israel's historic and biblical rights to the land. He also warned of the growing threat of Iran's nuclear program and advocated for a tough stance against terrorism and radical Islam. In 1996, Netanyahu became the Prime Minister of Israel for the first time after a close and bitter election campaign against Shimon Peres, who had succeeded Yitzhak Rabin after his assassination by a Jewish extremist. Netanyahu was the youngest person ever to hold the office and the first to be born after the establishment of the State of Israel. He inherited a difficult situation as Israel faced a wave of suicide bombings by Hamas and other militant groups, as well as international pressure to implement the Oslo Accords. Netanyahu tried to balance his hardline ideology with pragmatic diplomacy and engaged in negotiations with the Palestinians, the Syrians, and the Jordanians. He signed the Hebron Protocol and the Wye River Memorandum, which transferred some areas of the West Bank and Gaza to Palestinian control, but also expanded Israeli settlements and tightened security measures. He also confronted Iran and its allies, such as Hezbollah and Hamas, and launched a military operation in Lebanon in 1996, known as Operation Grapes of Wrath, to stop rocket attacks on northern Israel. Netanyahu's first term as prime minister was marked by internal and external challenges and controversies. He faced opposition and criticism from his coalition partners, his rivals within Likud, the Labor Party, the Israeli public, the Palestinian leadership, the Arab world, and the United States. He was accused of undermining the peace process, provoking violence, violating human rights, and damaging Israel's international reputation and relations. He also faced allegations of corruption, fraud, and breach of trust, which led to several police investigations and a vote of no confidence in the Knesset. In 1999, he was defeated by Ehud Barak, the leader of the Labour Party, who promised to revive the peace process and end the conflict with the Palestinians. Netanyahu spent the next decade in the opposition as the leader of Likud or as a private citizen. He criticized the policies of Barak and his successor, Ariel Sharon, especially their withdrawals from Lebanon and Gaza, which he claimed would create security vacuums and terrorist havens. He also opposed the 2005 disengagement plan, which dismantled all Israeli settlements and military presence in the Gaza Strip and led a rebellion within Likud against Sharon, who eventually left the party and formed a new centrist party, Kadima. Netanyahu regained the leadership of Likud in 2005 and became the leader of the opposition in the Knesset. He continued to warn of the dangers of Iran's nuclear ambitions and called for tougher sanctions and military action to prevent it from acquiring nuclear weapons. He also rejected the 2007 Annapolis Conference, which aimed to revive the peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians, and proposed an alternative plan which focused on economic cooperation and security arrangements rather than territorial concessions and statehood. In 2009, Netanyahu returned to power as the Prime Minister of Israel after a close and inconclusive election in which Kadima, led by Tzipi Livni, won the most seats but failed to form a coalition. Netanyahu managed to form a right-wing coalition with the support of nationalist religious and ultra-Orthodox parties. He also included the centrist Labour Party led by Ehud Barak, who became his defense minister. Netanyahu's second stint as prime minister was much longer and more stable than his first, as he consolidated his position as the leader of the right-wing camp and the head of a series of coalition governments, which lasted until 2021 with minor changes and crises. He also faced several challenges and opportunities both domestically and internationally, which shaped his policies and legacy. One of the main challenges that Netanyahu faced was the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which remained unresolved and volatile. Netanyahu declared his support for a two-state solution in his 2009 Bar Ilan speech, but conditioned it on several demands, such as the recognition of Israel as a Jewish state, the demilitarization of the future Palestinian state, and the retention of Jerusalem as Israel's undivided capital. He also resumed the expansion of settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem and imposed a blockade on Gaza, which was controlled by Hamas. He faced several rounds of violence and escalation with the Palestinians, such as the 2010 Gaza flotilla raid, the 2012 Operation Pillar of Defense, the 2014 Operation Protective Edge, the 2015-2016 stabbing intifada, the 2017 Temple Mount crisis, the 2018-2019 Gaza border, protests, the 2020-2021 Jerusalem clashes, and the 2023 Israel-Hamas war. He also engaged in several rounds of negotiations and diplomacy with the Palestinians under the auspices of the United States, the United Nations, the European Union, and other actors, but none of them resulted in a comprehensive and lasting peace agreement. He also faced criticism and condemnation from the international community, especially the United Nations and the International Criminal Court, for his alleged violations of international law and human rights in his dealings with the Palestinians. Another major challenge that Netanyahu faced was Iran and its regional influence. Netanyahu considered Iran to be the greatest existential threat to Israel and vowed to prevent it from developing nuclear weapons and supporting terrorist groups such as Hezbollah and Hamas. He campaigned vigorously against the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, also known as the Iran nuclear deal, which was signed by Iran and the P5+1 countries, the United States, Russia, China, France, Britain, and Germany, and which lifted the sanctions on Iran in exchange for limiting its nuclear program. He argued that the deal was flawed and dangerous, and that it would enable Iran to cheat and break out to a nuclear bomb, while also empowering it to expand its regional aggression and hegemony. He clashed with the Obama administration over the deal and delivered a controversial speech to the U.S. Congress in 2015, in which he urged the lawmakers to reject it. He also welcomed the Trump administration's withdrawal from the deal in 2018 and its reimposition of sanctions and maximum pressure campaign on Iran. He also supported the U.S. assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the commander of Iran's Quds Force in 2020, and the Israeli assassination of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, the head of Iran's nuclear program, in 2020. He also claimed that Israel had obtained a secret archive of Iran's nuclear documents, which proved that Iran had lied about its nuclear intentions and activities. He also authorized and conducted several covert and overt operations against Iran and its proxies, such as cyber attacks, assassinations, airstrikes, and sabotage in Iran, Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon. One of the main opportunities that Netanyahu seized was the normalization of relations with some Arab states, which had long been hostile or cold to Israel. Netanyahu pursued a strategy of building alliances and cooperation with moderate Sunni Arab countries, such as Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Oman, Sudan, and Morocco, based on common interests and threats, such as countering Iran, fighting terrorism, and promoting stability and prosperity. He also benefited from the Trump administration's pro-Israel policies, such as recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital, moving the U.S. embassy there, recognizing Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and presenting the Peace to Prosperity Plan, also known as the Deal of the Century, which was favorable to Israel's positions and demands. He also achieved a historic breakthrough in 2020 when he signed the Abraham Accords, which established diplomatic relations between Israel and the UAE and Bahrain, and were later joined by Sudan and Morocco. He also improved Israel's relations with other countries and regions, such as India, China, Russia, Africa, and Latin America, and expanded Israel's diplomatic presence and influence in the world. Another major opportunity that Netanyahu exploited was the economic growth and development of Israel, which he attributed to his free market reforms and innovation policies. Netanyahu, who had served as the finance minister from 2003 to 2005 and had implemented a series of austerity measures and privatizations, continued to pursue a neoliberal agenda as the prime minister, and claimed to have transformed Israel into a startup nation and a global leader in technology, science, and research. The war between Israel and Hamas in 2023 has had a profound impact on Israel and the leadership of the Netanyahu administration. The war has damaged the security and morale of the Israeli public, who have suffered from the unprecedented scale and intensity of the Hamas attacks, which have killed hundreds of civilians, wounded thousands more, and disrupted the normal life and economy of the country. The war has also exposed the intelligence and operational failures of the Israeli military and security agencies, which were caught off guard by the Hamas surprise assault and have struggled to contain and counter the rocket fire, the hostage takings, and the incursions from Gaza. The war has also increased the fear and anxiety of the Israeli public, who have faced the threat of a wider regional escalation and the possibility of a nuclear confrontation with Iran. The war has also undermined the political and personal credibility and legitimacy of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been widely blamed for the outbreak and the management of the war, and who has faced growing calls for his resignation or removal from office. Netanyahu, who has been in power for 14 years, and who has presented himself as the ultimate defender of Israel's security and interests, has been accused of failing to prevent and prepare for the Hamas attack, of mishandling the military and diplomatic response, of violating human rights and international law, and of endangering Israel's regional and global reputation and relations. Netanyahu has also faced allegations of corruption, fraud, and breach of trust, which have led to several criminal indictments and trials against him, and which have eroded his public support and trust. Netanyahu has also faced challenges and defections from his coalition partners, his rivals within the Likud party, the opposition parties, and the Israeli president, who have all demanded his departure and the formation of a new government. Benjamin Netanyahu is a complex and controversial figure who has shaped Israel's history and future. He has been praised and criticized for his achievements and failures, his vision and his stubbornness, his charisma and his cunning. He has been a hero and a villain, a leader and a survivor, a king or a legend. What do you think of Netanyahu and his rise to power? Let us know your opinion comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this one.